Crazy that it's almost a year ago since we were in this booth at Stablecoin Conference #1. But if you're just tuning in, this is Stable Dash Live. We're streaming live here from the BitSo Business Conference in Mexico City. We're here again with Caio from Lumx.
Stable Dash Live is sponsored by Agora, built for global institutions moving money at the speed of the internet. You can learn more at agora.finance.
Man, it's good to be with you. Why don't we start with, for those who are just meeting you, your quick intro, and then I'd love to just dive into what you're seeing right now on the product side. And it sounds like there's some like regulation focused top of minds. I think first off, if you're watching this live, stop watching it live and go back to the master class that you gave last year on picks. I think that was such a amazing understanding of like the Brazilian payment infrastructure and the landscape there. So go watch that, and then come back. But yeah, man, give us the intro, and we'll love to hear what's top of mind.
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, happy to be here again. It seems like a decade ago. Too many things.
It does.
Year, right?
Crazy.
That's crazy. But yeah, for those who don't know me, I'm Caio, founder and co-CEO at Lumx. Lumx is a stablecoin API for cross-border payments based in Brazil, Rio, to be more specific. Today, we basically have an API that enables businesses to collect, do payouts worldwide, and also enable named accounts and custodial wallets for their users. So we serve three main use cases up to this point, right? The first one is B2B payments, so mostly imports, exports, supplier payments out of LATAM to the world. The second one is treasury, so we serve corporate businesses that use our infrastructure to move money between their international accounts, right, in a more streamlined way. And finally, we also support neobank use cases that are giving global accounts or local currency accounts for global users to spend worldwide, right? And one cool thing about us, which makes us very different, especially in Brazil, is that we are the only stablecoin player who has a bank in the cap table, right? So we have one of the largest banks in Latin America in our cap table. It's called BTG Pactual, which basically gives us a very strategic alignment and a very unique position in Brazil, especially now that we're being regulated, right? So yeah, I think that's it.
What advantage does that give you, having BTG on the cap table? Like what has that accelerated or unlocked for the business so far?
Like, being honest, I think like two main things, right? The first one is that BTG now, when it comes to Brazil, is our main liquidity provider. So we connect them, we connect through them to get access to stablecoin liquidity. So instead of using, I don't know, OTC desk or exchanges, we get this directly from the stores, right? Because of course those guys then use the bank. We are directly with the bank. So definitely helps when it comes to liquidity depth and of course pricing, right? So we can be very competitive in Brazil specifically. And on a more like broader aspect, of course, this definitely helps on the branding side, right? Because
building credibility.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Because when you look at our customer base, like 90% of them are, let's call it, mainstream businesses, right? Mm-hmm. Web2 companies, fintechs, and platforms that don't necessarily understand what we are talking about here.
Yeah.
So what they want is someone they can trust, right? And if the bank of the size of BTG had trust us, why won't they, right? So this definitely helps on the sales side. So
yeah, how did you originally get them to trust you? Like, how did that relationship come to be? And yeah, it seems like a huge unlock for the business.
Yeah, it was funny because, for those who don't know me, now I'm talking about stablecoins, right? But Lumx actually started out in 2022 as a tokenization platform. So we used to tokenize literally everything, like tickets, carbon credit, real estate, like everything. And back in 2022, in Brazil was kind of this movement of CBDCs in the tokenized economy, right, from the central bank. So all the regulated players were trying to figure it out, how will we use blockchain to tokenize whatever, right? And BTG was one of those players. So they were looking for a blockchain infrastructure provider that could help them as some of the initiators, right? And we kind of became this player at first, mostly as their partners / infrastructure providers.
Yeah.
And this actually evolved to them being, wanting to invest in the company.
Yeah. Okay. So you have, you've evolved obviously from that, like tokenizing a lot of different things to tokenizing money, and a lot of the infrastructure that has to be around tokenized money to have utility, to work, to serve businesses. You said those three areas. I want to go back to that. Go back to those three like key use cases, and I'd love to like break down each of them, and I'd love to like maybe if you have top of mind examples or real like pain points that each of those three areas are solving, that would be great. So what were those three again that you said?
So B2B payments, right? And what B2B payments, I mean, on our perspective, in our use cases, sorry, most imports and exports and supplier payments, like,
Okay.
right? The second one is treasury management. So corporate businesses using our infrastructure to move money into their own accounts, like globally.
And is that a front end that you've created, or is that embedded within like other systems?
So our core is the API, right? But we also have a front end. Be honest, it's not that friendly for non-tech.
So most of the companies in bucket 2 are using the API.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, we're now actually improving our dashboard to make it even better, but up to this point, it's mostly API driven, right?
And is that meaning that like Lumx is embedding that API into other fintech platforms, or like maybe for let's go back to 1 and 2, and like any examples would be great. So like go back to the B2B use case. Like what's a business right now that's using this? What does that look like?
Yeah.
Give us as just clearly as possible, maybe the before and after of working with Lumx.
Yeah, like one very cool use case that I like a lot. We have a customer that's called Lumx, right? And TLDR is that they are the largest SaaS for imports and exports in Brazil. So before entering this new financial wave, they used to serve lots of importers and exporters for supply for the whole supply chain management,
Yep.
right?
So those businesses use this software. I think we talked about this before. They use this software to run their business in a non-financial way, just like data and systems.
The shipments.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's a logistics platform, sort of. And so you guys keep going. You've embedded within there, I believe, right?
Exactly. So recently on Q1 of this year, they officially launched the product, which is basically a global account for those importers and exporters. Like they serve mostly importers, right? So Brazilian businesses that are importing from Chinese, for example, exporters. So the main use case on their side is now that these importers have now a global account that can use to pay out to their offshore exporters, right? So usually the flow of funds is they do a non-ramp like from BRL to a stablecoin to a dollar-denominated stablecoin, right? And then through this custodial wallet that we serve them, they can then pay out through a USD named accounts that we created for them too, to the Chinese exporter, for example, like in Hong Kong or China itself, right? So this is their main use case. But it goes both ways, right? For the exporters, it's the opposite, right? So now they have a dollar account so they can collect payments offshore and bring them home, right?
Yeah. It seems to me, it seems like a really, really powerful position to put, to equip the software layer with financial tools, because I feel like so many companies like the ones that we're talking about have existing distribution and existing commercial relationships that are really sticky and they're really embedded. I'd imagine the importer or exporter that's using this software is like pretty reliant on it and very like connected to it. And before working with Lumx, was this company doing financial related, like were they offering financial services within the system in other ways, or was this the first time they've introduced? So it's like now, talk a little bit about what tokenized money and these types of tools. I mean, that is a huge unlock for companies, because you're essentially able to turn software businesses into financial services companies. How have you seen that, maybe specifically with this use case, drive new revenue? Like what's the impact of that for this company?
Yeah, it's huge, right? Because it's like embedded finance at its finest, right? Because now we haven't seen, of course, like embedded finance is not new, but now with stablecoins and this new infrastructure, definitely enables businesses to launch global products very fast, right? So for them, for example, like I mentioned to you, their business model were pretty much like a SaaS business, right? So subscription, some usage-based fees and all those things. But as you can imagine, especially in Brazil, when you look at the whole like FX volume that all the players do in Brazil, if I'm not wrong, around 60 to 70% of the whole FX volume in Brazil is related to imports or exports. And these guys, before doing anything with financial services, they already serve 1/3 of the whole Brazil volume, right? And they didn't capture anything of it. So as you can imagine, the addressable market for them is huge. Like you mentioned, the customers are already there, right? They already use the platform for everything. Why not also move money with the platform, right? So the growth has been great on their side. Of course, it's not all good, right? Because there's still some education.
Sure.
Because as you can imagine, these importers and exporters, they are used to using their traditional bank accounts that they have for 15 years. They know the people there. They kind of not know what is stablecoin. And these guys are really trying to push, okay, you're actually using stablecoin. They're not trying to hide it, you know?
Oh, really?
So
That's it. Why do you think they took that position?
because in the Brazilian market, the bubble really popped. So people actually know what is a stablecoin, right? Of course, not as us because they don't live 24/7 like we do. But what I'm trying to say is businesses are actively looking to have access to a stablecoin. They want to hold balances in stablecoin. Right?
There's a desire and a demand for that.
Exactly. So
What do you mean when the bubble popped? What do you mean by that?
I mean that it's not only us crypto/stablecoin bros that talk about this. Like literally you can have a very traditional business right now, especially because of the taxes in Brazil, the FX taxes, the IOF situation.
Can you dive into that a little bit? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, because like in Brazil, there's an FX tax which is called IOF, right? Which is basically every time that you do a FX transaction in Brazil, depending on the nature of the transaction, you need to pay a tax, right? Which is called IOF. And usually the IOF has been going down and down because there was like a huge government strategy for the IOF to actually be zero by 2030, if I'm not wrong, right? The problem was last year, because of the government and all those things, it went the opposite. So IOF was from 0.38% to 3.5%. So almost
Wow,
10x, right?
that's huge.
So basically the main issue, as you can imagine, is everything got more expensive. And the TRDR right now is most of those businesses that were doing traditional FX, they're starting to do this using stablecoins, right? Basically because with stablecoins in Brazil right now, of course, depending on how it is structured and how you design it, you can basically operate without the IOF in this aspect, right? But mostly,
so stablecoins as a core technology primitive has allowed businesses or users to avoid that tax.
Yeah, I don't like the word avoid because this might seem like a bad thing.
Sure.
But actually, like what this enabled is since now stablecoins as virtual assets are now kind of perceived as money.
Yeah.
Right? Businesses started to accept to receive payments in stablecoins, right? So it's not that rare for you to find, for example, a business in Brazil that is paying someone else in Hong Kong using stablecoins. So the receiver is actually receiving the payment in stablecoin directly, right? Of course, especially after the regulation came in Brazil, it's not like black and white, right? Because of course, stablecoins kind of are replacing FX in Brazil. Okay. So if you need to pay taxes on FX, like you cannot just use stablecoins and avoid the taxes, right? So now the market is regulated, so all the players are adapting and making sure that we are 100% compliant with what's required from the central bank, their RRS in Brazil.
Okay, I know we said we were going to go to like do 1, 2, 3, but I know I've derailed this so bad. But just since we're on the topic, like what do we need to know about the state of regulation in Brazil? It seems like there's been a very misunderstood up and down. Like what are you seeing right now? Like what does the world need to know about that? Like what's actually happening? Is it good? Is it bad? Seems a little bit unclear right now.
Yeah, so for context, so Brazil has kind of not regulation, but like a direction in virtual assets since 2021 to 2022, which was kind of like a general regulation for the virtual assets industry, but nothing was actually defined. But the main thing that this regulation did was to put the central bank as the regulator, right? So the central bank was the one who will be responsible to regulate virtual assets in Brazil. And last year in November, finally the regulation came. So the way Brazil did it was like the central bank published 3 resolutions: Resolution 519, 520, 521. Right?
Nice.
These are the resolutions.
I'm not going to remember that, but
no worries.
Good job.
And the issue is like each resolution kind of defining a few things, right? So for example, Resolution 5019 define what is a vast, right? What is considered a vast in Brazil? Which categories can you be in, right? So in Brazil now we have 3 categories essentially. So it can be intermediary, a custodian, or an exchange, which is like a combination of intermediary and custodian, right? And depending on the category of the license that you want to apply, of course, you can offer specific a list of services or products. And of course, it is more expensive depending on the type of license that you want to get. So for example, the first license, which is intermediary, the capital minimum for it to actually apply and only exist is $2 million.
$2 million to just get that ability,
just to exist. Just to exist. Exactly.
Okay. Insane.
And it can go up to $3.5 million, depending on the type of license that you want to apply.
And that doesn't even necessarily guarantee acceptance. That's just the application. It's like an application fee.
You need to apply, sorry. But it's not like a fee that you pay for someone
Okay.
else, right?
What about the other ones? Are they also expensive? The other two?
Yeah, so it started out at $2 million, which is 10 million reais, right?
Okay.
And it can go up to 18 million reais, right? So around $3.5 million.
Just for the first one, just for the intermediary?
No, just for the license. So intermediary is the $2 million, right?
Okay.
Custodian around 2.5.
Another 2.5. So now we're at 5 million.
No. You choose one.
You have to choose one.
Yeah.
So you can't be multiple?
Yeah, because if you are intermediary, you can do 1, 2, 3 things, right? For a custodian, you can be this and this.
Okay.
And for an exchange, you can do everything, right?
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
I see.
So
what is Lumx right now categorized as?
We have, because like, and also to give a better context on that. So to define what you are, it depends what you did up to February 2 of this year, because this was kind of the deadline for you to be considered an operational VASP. So for you to leverage the grandfather period, right?
Okay.
So in our case, up to February 2nd, we were actually doing everything, right? So because we offer the payments, so intermediary, we offer the custodial wallets, and we offer other services that are considered to being an exchange, right? In this case. So yeah, we'll be considered an exchange for this purpose.
And so you went through the process of applying. Did you go through that, or?
This is the funny story. 3 weeks ago, I don't know when you were watching this episode, but we are June 15, 2026.
Mid-June.
Yeah, but the issue is we have a event from the central bank like 2 weeks ago, and they literally told everyone that, oh, no one has applied yet. So basically,
no one has applied.
No
one has paid the fee.
No.
Well, good.
Yeah,
because it's just so expensive, or why do you think?
To be honest, the problem is not only the money; it's more about the requirements.
Okay.
Because Brazil put the bar very, very high.
It's just extremely taxing to go through. It's like an awful RFP, sort of we'll just drag you for.
The main issues like the compliance requirements, which of course you might think that, okay, this is kind of obvious, but the way they put it and the timeline that everyone needs to adapt put the bar very high, which to be honest for us is good because we were already very prepared. Again, we have a bank in the cap table, so we gotta be more compliant even if we don't want it to, right? So we were very well prepared on the aspect. But the reality is the market is being cleaned up. It's being cleaned up. So basically, like when you take a look at the whole market, a few players will survive. Others are literally selling right now.
What do you mean others? So others who would be in the position to apply for this are instead choosing to become acquired, or
exactly. Second operations try to merge or doing stuff like that.
Where have we seen? Are there examples of like recent acquisitions or recent companies that are good examples of that happening? I feel like we are in like an interesting period of consolidation throughout the stack. Are there any companies that come to mind there in this part of the world that have been recently acquired or like looking to get acquired? Maybe that's probably confidential, but are there any public examples of this?
Not yet.
Not yet.
A few of them.
But you're kind of sure.
Because like in Brazil, what is happening right now is two main things, right? The first one is startups like us, like other players in the ecosystem that they already know they won't be able to check all the boxes, right? So they will pretty much die or use someone else, or even sell the company. So these guys are trying to sell right now, or doing partnerships with us or other players that will apply for the license. We most likely get the license so they can continue to be operational, but they won't get the license themselves, right?
Okay.
But in Brazil also had a very specific situation because basically if you are like a pure VASP, you are capped. So essentially, this means that if you are a VASP, you have a limit of 100K per transaction, right? But if you are an FX broker, which is a regulated type of entity in Brazil, you can go from 100K to 500K, right? And if you, for example, have a big customer that wants to process $5 million per transaction, you need to go through a bank, right? Because banks doesn't have any limits. So as you can imagine, what is happening right now is some of those FX brokers that also won't check out the boxes because they also need to be regulated as a VASP are trying to sell the license, right?
And are banks the ones who are in the position to purchase these companies typically, or who is buying?
They don't need it because banks don't have any limits. They can operate without any limits, and they are pursuing the VASP license themselves, right?
Okay.
So the ones who are trying to buy these FX brokers are companies like us, for example, right? I'm not saying that we are doing this right now, but
you're also not
it,
saying you're not
thinking about it. The thing is like you can pretty much operate in higher limits, right? And you are buying a already regulated entity, which of course comes with its own challenges.
What is it like? Just like, you know, there's such an interesting, the role that the government plays in creating these dynamics is so obvious. Like the cost of application, the requirements of these things. Like in Brazil, it seems like with the PIC system and all these other things, the central bank, the government seems like a very, very integrated and involved, for better or worse, party in this conversation compared to other countries that have like taken a very hands-off approach and like kind of, you know, go and build and do what you want, and then, you know, we'll come out with regulation later. But it feels more freeing for builders to like not have those constraints or not have those barriers. Like, what has it been like for you on being an entrepreneur and builder in that part of the world? How have you navigated that? It seems like a very, you know, for a company like yours in the part of the world that you're in, a very, very important piece to success is how you navigate these things. How have you done that?
Yeah, so the funny part is no joke, I've been spending like in the last 3 months, I've been spending at least like 70% of my time only talking about regulation, talking to lawyers, designing flow of funds or adjusting flow of funds to making sure that everything is compliant, updating our policies, dealing with auditors that are, because we need to be audited right now for specific things to actually be able to apply. So the reality is like eventually you need to slow down on product, right? You cannot launch new features and launch you know, new currencies and everything and still adjust everything to apply for the license, especially due to the bar being very, very high in Brazil. So the reality is we chose our path, right? Like I mentioned, we see the license as one of the main definition of success for Lumx, especially because from my perspective, of course, I totally believe in our team, in our product. We think that we have a very unique position in the region, but the reality is the space is very crowded, right? So we have a lot of players kind of trying to do the same thing. Global players trying to enter the Latin region. They will pretty much look to use us or other players in the ecosystem, or even try to acquire one of them, or even try to enter themselves. But the reality is we see this license in the time that this came as one of the main definitions of success and one of the modes that we can have on our strategy. So this is why we decided to purposely slow down in a few aspects. So for example, like, of course, we continue selling, we continue trying to grow, right? Because this is part of the business. But we chose a path of maybe giving up a little bit of revenue or a little bit of, you know, new features and product development right now for this to pay off in the midterm, right?
Sure.
Because again, what we have been seeing in the space is that a lot of players are doing stuff, you know, in a not that good way. They're maybe getting a lot of money right now, but being honest, I don't think they will survive after this wave of the central bank approvals came, you know? So this is why, you know, it is a decision that we took. Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of the bit license in the US and just like in the late teens, like how powerful it was to have one of those. There's like, you know, maybe a dozen plus companies who did. So it sounds like you see getting this, applying, going through that process, and then eventually getting this license as a key strategic moat for the business. But it's like it's going to take some time. How long do you expect this process to take?
Yeah, so here's the thing. There's a deadline of October 29 that you can apply, right? So if you don't apply by October 29, you're out. So you either need to close your business or you need to use someone else.
And 2 weeks ago, the government said that no one has applied yet, is what you said. Oh my gosh. Okay.
So based on our conversations with the market, pretty much everyone will apply at the same time.
Okay. It's kind of like is it public information who applies, or is it
No.
private? So no one knows.
No one knows.
Okay.
Yeah. We know this because literally the central bank said this on the
Okay.
event. But if they didn't say anything, we won't know. But the funny part is when you talk with the players in the ecosystem, they will say the same thing, right? So everyone is adapting, making sure that we are 100% prepared to make sure that when we apply, everything is good. So let's say we apply today, right? The approval process is divided into phases. Phase 1, which is what we are adapting right now, and phase 2. What is the difference between phase 1 and phase 2? For example, there are a few requirements that are only required on phase 2. Travel rule, for example, right? So travel rule is not required in Brazil, but only for phase 2, which is only 2027, right now. We could, of course, implement travel rule now, and we are actually doing this, but we won't need if you don't want it to, right? Because it's not required on phase 1. So let's say we apply today. The central bank doesn't have any timelines to approve, so they can take 1 day or 1 year. But when they approve you on phase 1, you have 60 days to be 100% compliance with phase 2.
Wow.
So this is the funny part, right?
So you kind of have to be ready for all of the phases right away.
Yeah.
Okay. And get all of your dominoes ready to go.
Exactly. So it's like chessing.
Yeah.
Do I apply right now? But what if the central bank approves too fast, right? But what if they took too long? What if I'm the last one that applies, or I'm the first one, right? So everyone's kind of trying to figure out the best timing to apply.
So you foresee some consolidation to continue to happen within a lot of the players who are in this conversation in Brazil, who want to join forces, maybe avoid having to go through all of this. Do you see ultimately that consolidation as a good thing, or is that like a loss for the industry?
Yeah, of course, I'm biased, right? Because of course, for us, again, we are very prepared. We have capital. We have a good team. So of course,
you just raised, right? What was the last raise?
Yeah, so we raised a 3.4 seed round, $3.4 million back in October last year.
Okay, so October of 25.
25, yeah, and we didn't make it public, but we also did an extension round on Q2 of this year.
Okay,
but we didn't make it public yet. We brought some new investors that we will soon announce.
Cool.
But yeah, so for us, of course, it's good because if the market concentrates, this means more business for us, less competition and everything else. But from a personal perspective, of course, it's kind of bad, right? Because you are literally killing a lot of businesses in the industry. A lot of players are leaving Brazil, literally. For example, Conduit, right? Conduit, one of those global players that actually try to enter Brazil. They hired a team there, and they kind of left Brazil, right?
Due to these barriers.
Yeah, exactly. And we have a lot of global exchanges that are leaving the country or not applying for the license, maybe using someone else, right? So what is happening right now is only a few players will actually survive, not only because they will check out the boxes, but for various reasons, these global players, first, a lot of them doesn't necessarily make sense to apply for the license, right? Because you can spend this money in something else, right?
Yeah.
So what is happening right now is this. So for the local players like us, pretty much only 4 or 5 will survive, right? So the market will be very concentrated. At the same time, we have been seeing a lot of, conversations about consolidation when it comes to M&As, mergers and acquisitions, and even these global players trying to buy local players in Brazil, right? For example, the FX brokers that I mentioned to you, they can go up to 500K, right? Those limits. So we have been seeing some conversations on that. But
so interesting.
But the reality is the biggest winners of this whole thing are the banks, right? Because they don't have any limits. They can now provide services to everyone. If you want to process real volume, you will need to use a bank, right? Believe it or not. So again, they are the biggest winners on this battle. But yeah, here's the thing.
Are you happy about that?
Again, I'm biased, right? Because I have a bank with me. But you know,
Yeah, it's hard.
yeah,
It's hard.
yeah.
Well, thank you for continuing to like bring depth of knowledge here. I feel like this is like a masterclass for anyone who's thinking about the regulatory state in Brazil. And I feel like all across Latin America, Asia, Europe, like what's so complex about the reality of the moment we're in is like all of these different teams in this room right now are all trying to do, I mean, every country has its own requirements, and it's like a very, very complicated, like we spent this entire conversation really unpacking Brazil, but that's like, you know, one of so many different markets that are super important with businesses and use cases and different, you know, banking dynamics. And yeah, it's interesting. I admire the focus and like niching down and really trying to win that market and focusing there, because what we've seen is a lot of companies who, you've mentioned some of them, who take more of that like broad approach and try to like enter markets and do a ton of things. And it actually gets really hard to create a sense of depth and a sense of like understanding for a market. And so shout out to you guys. I think you've done a really good job of like the team, and everyone here that we meet is just like incredible people. And the cap table seems incredibly intentional. So keep us posted with like the process of the application and all of that stuff. But yeah, good luck. As an American, I'm like, there's like, I don't know if I'm like a fan of the barriers to entry here. I think it feels a little like unfortunate, but like you said, selfishly, I think you guys are positioned extremely well to win that race. So it'll be fun to keep following along. Maybe we'll be here next year in the booth again.
Yeah.
What final thoughts for the Stable Dash community?
Yeah, no, first of all, thank you for the conversation. Again, always a pleasure, right? Let's hope next year we already have a license.
Yeah. $2.5 million less wealthy, it sounds like. A big check that has to be written, but it sounds like you guys have some maybe funding news and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that all makes sense. But Kyle, thanks for the time.
Yeah.
And it's always fun. I really enjoy talking to you. You bring a really good spirit to these conversations. So
Thanks,
all right, man.
Yeah.
We'll take a quick break. This is Stable Dash Live presented by Agora. We're here in Mexico City. We'll be right back. Appreciate you tuning in. See you soon.
Yeah.